Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Today, I have an extremely special guest with me in Dr. Addyson-Zhang. Dr. I is currently working on her company, Classroom Without Walls, where she looks to bring innovation to the classroom by teaching different topics that will help children succeed in today's current environment in an outdated education system. She is teaching and inspiring the next generation of innovators that will go on to change the world. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. I. Thank you so much for being with us today, Doctor.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Chris. Honored.
No, honor is totally mine. I know you have a crazy schedule, so it means a lot that you're taking your time with me here today.
Oh, thank
Anyway,
you.
yeah. So I'd say to go ahead and get started, would you be able to just give a brief introduction of yourself, who you are, where you're from, and just kind of a background of who you are?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I grew up in China and I came to the US in my very early 20s to study. So I went to Syracuse and I got my master's degree. Then I went to University of Maryland where I got my PhD and then I started teaching. So I pretty much spent my entire professional career in higher education and I taught in the classroom for 10 plus years. And about last year, I resigned from my associate professor position and decided to build my own school, Classroom Without Walls, and
I
where
love
we
it.
believe the best education happens outside the classroom.
Yes, exactly. And I know you briefly alluded to it, but I'd love for you to just tell a little bit more about your story about what made you want to quit. I mean, you had a very prestigious position as a professor. You spent most of your life in higher education. What made you want to drop all that, everything you knew, to go ahead and start Classroom Without Walls?
Yeah, it was really out of my compassion for the students and frustration as a mom and educator. After teaching so many years in the classroom, it is pretty common when you talk to another educator and what you see in the classroom is that many students are very disengaged. They don't enjoy being in the classroom. And to many students, learning is equivalent to earning an A, a B, or GPA. Like the questions I got asked a lot are like, Dr. I, will this be on the exam, right? Hey, Dr. I, if I go to your event, and are you going to give me a point? So that's the things I heard a lot, GPA, A or B or C, and then they will be arguing with you about their grade and point. And I got so annoyed, and that's not why I decided to be a teacher. I decided to be a teacher for intellectual discussions. Students actually enjoy learning for the sake of learning. And I don't see anything like that. So at the same time, I became a mom, and I literally saw how my own children, before I started, and my husband, before we started homeschooling them, and how they changed from being inquisitive, curious, imaginative to last year, my age back then, 7 years old, he started to complain about school. So boring, couldn't get up in the morning, and not interested in learning. I was like, wow, what happened? What is happening to my own children is what I'm seeing in the classroom. I was like, wow, this happened even earlier than college age. So at the same time, I was doing research about this topic, right? Like I was crying every single semester, this is not working, what to do. Students were also crying. They were not learning the skills. They suffer from so many mental health issues. So it was like tears pretty much every semester. I was like, there has to be a solution. So as I was doing research about this, I noticed, creativity decreases as children become older, imagination decreases as they become older. And the number one TED talk is, can schools kill creativity? I was like, wow, if this model is broken, why do still so many people send children to school? And I asked myself a very audacious question. Do I want to be part of the problem to continuously perpetuate this cycle or be part of the solution? So I decided to be part of the solution. And there is a saying, I don't know if you know this, Chris, the master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house. So what that saying is, like, if you try to innovate or build a new house or destroy this house. But if you are using the master's tools to try to destroy this house, it doesn't work. That's kind of what happened to me. I was trying to innovate within the system, but every time when I tried to do something and the system was changing me. So I decided to resign, to be part of the solution, to use a new set of tools to build a new system. And that's kind of my story, where I started building Classroom Without Walls.
Yeah. And going on that, you therefore decided to name your business Classroom Without Walls. You briefly talked about, but I'd love for you to go more in depth, just what you do specifically within Classroom Without Walls in regards to with the children.
Yeah. So actually, yeah, this started as a hashtag. So I was teaching public relations, communication classes, and social media classes. But at that time, I was a pure academic. You know, I got so many degrees, the highest degree possible. And what I learned from my life was like so many theories. And that's what I taught my students. And every semester, I read my students' review of my classes. And it was pretty good, but oftentimes I will read like, oh, so many theories. We need to learn more practical stuff. I was like, you know what? They're right, right? So if I want to teach my students how to embrace social media, and I need to do this myself. You know, I need to become a practitioner instead of just like a talking head. So I decided, you know, to launch my very first live streaming show 3 years ago when Facebook allow people to go live. So I launched my very first live streaming show with the pure intention to be a better teacher. So students can learn not only from me, but also from all the people that I interview. I was teaching social media, so I interviewed all those people in social media marketing. And that show literally changed my life. Even though the intention was to be a better teacher, it changed my career. But anyway, so when I started that show, I was like, no, what do I call my show? I was like, yeah, so what I'm doing is like try to show my students the best education actually happens outside the classroom. And they need to learn from not only academics, you know, but also practitioners outside the classroom. And also we try to disrupt the perception that you only go to a physical classroom to learn. And I was trying to build this like global online classroom. So it started as a hashtag, but last year after I resigned, I was like, you know what? Now I have no job. So what if I build my own school? I was like, wow, that's a great idea. And being an action taker myself, so I resigned in August and I decided to launch my very first program. And so which happened in December. So I give myself 4 months from my official resignation to kind of to do my very first in-person program. And we did that in Singapore, which was an amazing experience for the students and myself to kind of validate my idea, you know, a crazy idea in my mind. I wanted to see if it is going to happen in real life. It happened. Parents cried, students cried, I cried, but we all cried for different reasons. The reason I cried was because this is literally how I have envisioned classroom. And I just couldn't believe it is actually happening. And I'm the reason to make it happen. And so right now I'm running the program again. And our curriculum is very different. We cover 3 core components. And our tagline is, we teach you what schools are not to help you be future ready. And to do that, we cover 3 core components. And again, those 3 core components are developed based on my experience as an educator, as a researcher, as an entrepreneur, and based on my experience of working with almost 3,000 students and my own research. I know what do children today need to learn and to master in order to be future ready. So the first one is new media knowledge, and which we discussed kind of personal branding. We are entering today's show me economy, not the traditional tell me economy on a piece of paper. You tell me your GPA, you tell me how good you are, we're entering today's show me economy. So in order to showcase your skills, you have to leverage social media and creative technologies. So I really will work with our students to understand how they can use social media to create, to market their skills and knowledge, instead of allowing social media to use them. So we flip the coin. It was really, really powerful. And we actually just finished that component. And each of my students, they are launching a live streaming video podcast. So I'm really excited. They are interviewing like influencers in their own field and overcoming their fear of talking to the camera, for example, and putting yourself out there, and communication skills. So it's really nice. And our second core component is life skill. Based on LinkedIn Learning, McKinsey report, and so many reports have suggested that the traditional higher education, college education is not preparing our students, it's not giving them important life and soft skills. And also based on my surveys with the parents, they were like, yeah, my children have no life skills. So we added the life skill component, and under life skill, we discussed communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. And again, this is where we are different from the traditional classroom. Traditional classroom creates memorize. This is definitely communication. Those are the 5 core components of communication, right? Encoding, decoding, noise, this and that, but we actually practice. So what I did is I actually hired some top trainers in Singapore that I worked with them last year when I did my first program. So they came in, they also brought in a few students from Singapore to actually practice communication, collaboration, and practice adaptability. And literally they are adapting. Like for example, they learned there are different time zones, right? Because we had to change our class time. And I was like, oh yeah, you know what? Like Pacific is only one of the many time zones that we have. And so it's really interesting to see that. And so our third core component is mindset. We really work with the students, and because every kid, the older they are, the more damage that I have to undo. And isn't that interesting? I noticed. And the more educated they become, the more damage I have to undo. So there is a lot that I have to help my students to kind of unlearn and then relearn. And mindset is a big part, and help them build their confidence and emotional intelligence, self-awareness. Like, who are you? What are your core values? Like, they don't even know, because for their entire life, which is dictated by a school curriculum, right? They don't really get to ask, who am I? What are my core values? And I didn't start asking those questions until I was 35. And I wish, literally the program that I'm creating right now was something that I wish I had when I was younger. And even like besides me, we have a group of digital mentors. And I think one problem in the traditional education is we have way too many academics. We have not enough professionals, because I chose a major without having any conversation with a real life practitioner who is actually doing PR, public relations, with me. I mean, if I had that conversation 2 decades ago, I wouldn't be teaching this, because it's so different from like learning about something is so different from how people are actually doing this. But anyway, we try to disrupt that. So besides me, we have, for this cohort, we have 8 to 10 digital mentors who are very successful. Maybe they are a high school dropout or college dropout, but they are very successful 7-figure entrepreneurs, thought leaders, making a difference, changing lives in their own industry. I mean, yeah, so our last curriculum is mindset. We'll work with the students, understanding their core values, self-awareness, self-regulation, and very soon we are going to have someone who is an expert on positive psychology to come in to work with students to help them understand who they are and build and boost their confidence and learn how to navigate and how to handle negative emotions. I mean, like, one thing I know for sure is that students over the last several years, their mental health has deteriorated so much the last 4 or 5 years. And so I really want to help students to work on that, practice and cultivate self-love. See, one thing is that if you want to push your children, or like doesn't matter how old you are, even for me, to embrace social media, to put myself out there, at the same time, we have to work on the internal self-love, because you don't want to feel good about yourself because you get 100 hearts on your Instagram post. You want to feel good about yourself because you love yourself. And I think this is really missing as children are embracing social media. At the same time, we need to also coach them to embrace who they are as a solid human being. And then so we also do that. So that's kind of my program. Yeah.
And I didn't, you could just see your passion just come right from as you're talking, and I absolutely love it, because you can tell that you're in this for all the right reasons. You want to make a difference. You want to help bring change to a current system that is really outdated. You know, it's I know in a previous conversation we had, we talked about how you see these pictures alongside. It's like a computer from 50 years ago and a computer today, and all these different sectors. And then you have the education system where it's virtually untouched. And like, I think that there needs to be people exactly like you going out in the world and looking to make these differences. And also one thing that I love as well with Classroom Without Walls and what you're doing, you go so much further than just simply like the education of maybe a subject. It's just like that last point you're talking about. I mean, you want to go ahead and build a holistic person, somebody that's confident, somebody that understands, you know, core values and things like that. And it also kind of ties into something you said earlier of the longer the people are in the system, the more it's like, I guess you could say, work on your end, because it's a matter of how long have they been surrounded with this mindset or this thought. And it's just a matter, it could even be at home or friends, whatever it is. But, you know, it's you come what you're surrounded with and what you hear every day. And I think that therefore putting yourself in a program like this would just, I mean, it would help so much.
Totally. Thank you for saying that. And I want to add to the like life skill component. And actually, I created an iceberg model. The tip of the iceberg model is like the traditional like knowledge. You know, go to school, you learn something, academic performance. But I really want to show parents that is only the tip of the iceberg. You will need the entire iceberg to be future ready. Just like, for example, GPA. Research has shown that GPA is actually inversely related to innovation. And the higher the GPA, the less likely the kid is to innovate, to disrupt. And also life skill. Research has shown life skill or emotional intelligence is 2 times more predictive of a person's success than IQ. 2 times more. But again, they don't learn that. I hire people work with me all the time. And oftentimes it's not because of their IQ, it's really because of their EQ that I decided to collaborate with this person. It is much easier to find people who have the skills, much harder to find people who have the skills and also have a high level of emotional intelligence that will make collaboration and communication actually enjoyable. And so I really want to make an effort to help our students, the next generation, to develop those important emotional EQ skills.
Yeah, no. And I mean, 2 times is more likely, I think you said, what was it? The IQ versus the EQ. And the problem is that everyone thinks it's the other way around.
Exactly. I mean, when you go to school, I don't know if you hear this a lot, when our children were still students and we will pick them up from school, and you will hear a lot from parents saying that, hey, what's your score, right? Like how many A's, like report card, you look at A and B, why did you get a C? That is so bad. So if that is the message we're sending to our children, so no wonder by the time they come to higher education, which is the population that I have been working with for almost 2 decades, They in their mind, learning is equivalent to A because that's the message they have been receiving for so many years. The damage is pretty deep to unlearn that part, to actually train them to enjoy the journey of learning, to embrace failures and mistakes. But you know what, Chris, the question I used to ask, as a depressed college professor crying, I was like, what's wrong with our students? Why nobody enjoyed learning? But now the question I ask is, what's wrong with today's education? And because I see transformation in my own students and my program within like 2 days or 2 sessions a week, I was like, wow, you're like a new person. So to me, now I tell parents, your children are perfect. They are good, but the way that they are being taught, the system is very broken. One of my favorite quotes is, when the flower is not blooming, we fix the environment in which our flower is growing. So flower is like children. When children are not doing well, stop labeling, even though we're so good at that, right? Stop labeling our children, or start examining the environment in which our children are growing. And now after I change the environment, after I change the way that I'm teaching the next generation, oh my God, all those kids, they are amazing.
Yeah, no, and I think that you're touching upon a really important chord, because one thing that I'm super passionate about is trying to solve the mental health problem all around the world, but especially within the younger generations, And me being a 20-year-old college student, I've been able to see it firsthand. And as I experience and see even the younger generations that are born completely like in a phone in their hand and everything, it's just scary to see, the effects and just everything that's going on. And I just love that what you're doing in your program is you're teaching kids how to effectively use social media and all these other tools, and how to go ahead and build that confidence within themselves. Because the problem is a lot of people are now starting to understand the negative effects that social media can have on especially young people. The problem is that they then see it as a negative thing that, oh my gosh, like I want to get away from completely, but that's not the case. Like you teach in Classroom Without Walls, social media can be one of the greatest assets and tools that you could use to create amazing things, to build out your personal brand and all this stuff.
Oh, totally. I mean, like just this global classroom, the fact that I could have my friends from Singapore and students from Singapore, from London, from different parts of literally the globe to be a part of the program is because of social media, is because I'm practicing digital networking. So I have a global network in my network. So every time, like one student, she was like, Dr. I need to connect with some creative writers. I was like, yes, this person connect. And another person, I need to connect with someone in the fitness industry. I was like, yes, connect. And the reason I can do that is because I have been using social media very intentionally and very strategically to nurture my network. I think this is something that teachers of the 21st century should all embrace. I mean, like we know that students need to find internships, right? But like they don't know how powerful social media is to make this type of digital connections and then manifest those connections into the 3D reality as like internships, jobs or interviews, this and that. But very few educators are doing what I do, and they think this is the IT department. Then again, here, that's a huge problem, right? Teachers need to understand how to use social media. You don't need to learn how to code or how to design a computer, but you need to know how to use this as a pedagogical or how to use this as a teaching tool to amplify what you do as a teacher, right? And again, very few teachers know this, and many K-12, at least in the United States, they ban social media completely. Like then again, we're sending to our children the message, this is so bad, stay away from this, right? I mean, that's, as you mentioned, Chris, that's only one aspect. There's this entire other positive aspect that nobody is talking about. That's where I got Like where I came in, our tagline, we teach you what schools are not to be future ready. So yeah, I mean, like the fact is that children are on social media anyway, just because we are banning it in the school 9 to 5 hours. But when they go back home, guess what? They are Snapchatting, they are TikToking, they are Instagramming. Why not educate them in a more public manner? Hey, this is actually how you are using this to be career ready, to engage in personal development, to network with like-minded people, to make a difference, to create a social movement, so many other benefits. But again, they're not learning that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that I liken social media and the internet, all that we've been given with this, as a double-edged sword, because there are a ton of great things that can be done with it, but in the same aspect, a lot of not so great things that can come from it.
100%, yeah.
And I think the important key factor behind it, making sure that it sticks in our positive side, is just simply knowledge and education of it. Because if people can't understand how to properly use these different platforms in the internet, and I mean, it's nothing too complicated, just a matter of, taking the time to learn about it. It can be so helpful, and instead, as you said.
Totally. And practice critical thinking, right? There are fake people. I mean, I have been having this conversation with my 8-year-old. And in fact, one of my students in my program right now, I just had a conversation with him about fake people. And I recently had a conversation with a guy. I thought he was the real person, but it turned out to be a fake. Like, you need to learn, right? You need to practice. How can you tell this is an authentic person, this is a fake person? Like, what are some, I was asking, sending videos, show me this and that. There are lots of things you can learn from a negative encounter like that. And yeah, even my 8 years old selling on eBay, there are always fake buyers, right? So like we are using that to have a great conversation about critical thinking. How can you tell a person is authentic, genuinely interested in purchasing from you versus someone is trying to get you money? And a great discussion. We actually learned a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I did want to hop back to that you spoke about earlier was the global aspect. So you said that you take your students over to Singapore, and you've also mentioned how you're calling people from London, all around the world. A question I have for you, what do you think is the importance behind seeing different cultures, traveling the world, and kind of getting that global perspective?
I mean, so important. I recently interviewed Duncan Wardle, who is the former VP of innovation at Disney. And one of my favorite quotes from him is, diversity is innovation. When you are working with people who look so different from you, who think so different from you, and this means that you are on your way to think differently, right? To have some of your very assumptions that you take for granted to be challenged. Like the questions that you think that even right now is happening in my program. I was like, wow, is that even a question? Because I have been in the river for so long, or I have been breathing the air for such a long time. People ask me, hey, what is your breathing? I was like, I don't know. But when you like encounter someone who from a totally different space, like, wow, and then you will actually think, oh, wow, because you have someone who is different, who will challenge you about what you take for granted. And I love that, right? And actually there is a trend, like people are starting to hire like students who come from totally different educational background, right? Even though they are hiring an HR person, they might hire someone from computer science, for example, so that they can bring in with that fresh perspective. And to me, that is very, very important. And another reason that we add the international component is I believe education and life is an inside out journey. And oftentimes students' heart is asleep. So for me to wake up their heart is to send them to a different place that is so exotic, that is so different. The water they're drinking is different. The language is like even English, very different accent. And the food is so different. Day-to-day is different, like environment, everything is so different. And that's how they can wake up their heart wake up their soul to start thinking, start to be more alive again. And actually, many startup founders in the US, all over the globe, they actually gained their startup ideas from being overseas. I travel so much, I see how traveling internationally, not just from the US to Canada, but actually to a more exotic place, has really helped me understand my core values, who I am, to look at my environment very differently. Almost like give you a third eye to look at life. And to me, that is precious. That is something to makes you very unique. When you are designing a game, you can actually integrate different elements from Thailand, from Paris, from China, from Japan, to make that very unique. And you need that international exposure to be very unique. So those are some of the reasons we added this. I mean, our very first stop is Singapore. When I design this is like every year I want to be in a different country. And so that is our very first location. And I hope in the next several years I can add a few more additional itineraries. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, because I've been born and raised in Southern California, lived here my entire life until I went to college, which then for my very first semester of college, I went over to Rome. And yes, it wasn't maybe as foreign and different, but it was just, even looking from that, it was something new for me. And I was able to travel all over Europe and see the different cultures. And I think from that experience, I was then able to see the importance that we are talking about here, of seeing these different perspectives. And since then, I've had a bug. I just want to, keep seeing new cultures. So ended up going South America. I'm hoping I could make my way to Singapore at some point and see stuff like that. But I just find it to be so vital and so important in, your personal development, but then also just being a problem solver, because you're able to see things from a different perspective entirely. I know that me personally, I thought of things way differently just only living my entire life in the US versus now I've had all these travel experiences.
I mean, yeah, you can see the way I designed this program because I traveled internationally so much. That's why I added the international component, right? I don't think many schools are like having this type of, like, at least people who do what I do, they may have a retreat within the same country, but I see how my international experience has benefited me. Therefore, I added this experience. Yeah, it's definitely affecting me and how I run my business. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched upon such an important point of an inside out education, because I think you could also liken that to the importance of building a strong foundation personally, because like we've been talking about, not always do people focus on themselves, their confidence, and all these things that are vital for success in any area of life. So I absolutely love what you're doing there. I think it's
100%. I truly believe the more you transform the inside, the more you are going to transform the outside. But it has to start here.
Absolutely. And then one last question that kind of starting to wrap it up. For all the people here listening today, how would you suggest that they could, take action to become more innovative, whether they're a student or maybe they're a bit older? What suggestions would you have for them to build this solid foundation that we're talking about and get this new perspective?
Yeah, totally. I mean, right now we're in this COVID, and I think it's very hard to travel to different places. But I would recommend everyone to really tap into the technology that they have to start a podcast, like what you are doing, right? So maybe this person is interested in becoming an artist. So if I were this person, I would interview all those other amazing artists and ask them about their important life lessons, how they get to where they are today, if they could talk to their younger self, what are some key lessons they will share, all those things. It is a great way to learn, to study abroad without studying abroad. So I interviewed 200 people almost, and I have learned so much from all the people I talked to. And some of them are like, wow, I thought that was like this, but by having a conversation with this person, what I was thinking initially was totally incorrect. I think that is valuable for a student to understand, can literally save lives, right? save lots of their time by having conversations like that. Yeah. And also at the same time, they're also developing important life skills. And this is free. They don't even need to have a big budget. You know, our phone is good enough, right? Yeah. So I would recommend people start doing that. And then when you can travel, you actually have this global network. You can meet up with people in person. And I do that all the time. I connect with my social media friends. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know that we both, this is actually how we met, but if I wanted to go ahead and maybe reach out to somebody, meet someone, what social platforms could I use to go ahead and do that?
I mean, my favorite one is actually LinkedIn, and I think it's like a very professional. And I don't know, cause I'm old. Maybe I'm not really into fluff, you know, babies, cats, dogs, food. No, I'm not very interested. So LinkedIn works really well for me, and just like professional connections, parents, podcasts, speaking engagement, clients. Almost all of them come from LinkedIn. So like, yeah, so I just love LinkedIn. Yeah. And also in terms of from the social media marketing perspective, and all the other platforms are very saturated. The organic reach on LinkedIn is a lot higher compared to Instagram, for example. Facebook is like the organic reach on Facebook is 0.01. I mean, that was like last year. I think right now it's even lower. So LinkedIn is a lot higher. That's another reason. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I'm a huge advocate towards LinkedIn. I know that's where we met. So just kind of want to throw it out there for you to reaffirm stuff that I may have talked about in the past already. So
100%. Yeah, totally. I mean, like, if especially for students, there are not that many students who are on LinkedIn, especially who are actively creating content. And I think if you are doing that, that is like another additional plus for you. Yeah.
yeah. And for me, when I started LinkedIn, it was more of the way I was taught what it was simply an active resume,
Mm-hmm.
which it's yes, it has stuff about you, but it's so much more than that. I mean, you're able to go and talk to people. You're able to start conversations that, you know, lead to innovations and stuff like that. So, I mean, I just think there's so much more that people don't realize is standing right in front of them with LinkedIn.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a great way to practice storytelling, story selling.
Absolutely. And then to go ahead and finish up the interview, let's say somebody wants to go ahead and join Classroom Without Walls, maybe talk to you a little bit more. How could they go ahead and reach out to you? I know that I'm going to include your LinkedIn somewhere around here, your LinkedIn link. So
Yeah, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email at AI, which is my name, artificial intelligence, that's easy to remember, AI at classroomwithoutwalls.ai. So you can email me, they can check out my website. I have like a detailed program description, quite a few testimonials from parents, from students, and yeah, I'm actually getting ready to launch my third program, which is the 3 months program. I have recently, due to popular demand, I actually created a 1-year program. And so I have a 1-year program, which is more one-on-one, working with me more directly. And I have a like 3 months program. So yeah, feel free to check it out. Message me if you have questions.
yeah, absolutely love it. And I can't hold my excitement back to go ahead and see the stuff they're going to continue to do and how you reshape the entire field of education. So with that being said, I'd like to thank you so much for coming today, Doctor, and wish you all the best.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. I had a great time.
Yes, it was fantastic. Anyway, well, thank you so much, Doctor, and have a good one.